I've been a minority business owner for more than 2 decades. I started my first company when I was in college. I've got 3 partners. We've launched 5 ventures. So I'm not just here to be in the midst of MBEs and MWBs. I am an MBE. I've been in this game for a long time. And across my varied experiences, from Rutgers to Oxford to being a Rhodes Scholar to studying at MIT to winning The Apprentice, that's a whole other speech. You can imagine that speech. I'll say this, that what's been most valuable across my experiences has not been the things that I've done, but rather the ways that I think. And I don't take credit for how I think. It's been cultivated in me over years through my parents, through my mentors, through teachers, other supporters, but there are a particular set of ways that I do think that have been instilled in me. And so I want to speak to you to the following theme: the innovator's mindset. The innovator's mindset. Now, before I talk about the mindset of an innovator, let me set the stage for 2 trends that give rise to the need for the mindset. The first trend, or rather the 2 trends, are technology and the economy. Technology and the economy. The first trend is one that this audience is no stranger to. Technology and economy are 2 trends that have transformed every industry that is represented in this room today. If I take the first, the economy, we all know we're living in very challenging economic times. We've been in the midst of that since 2008. And while there are lots of names for it, layoffs, workforce reductions, restructurings, reorganizations, downsizing, my favorite, right-sizing, mergers, acquisitions, integrations, consolidations, we've seen it all over the past few years. And suffice it to say that the marketplace is not as plentiful as it was back in 2008. We can all agree to that. The implications of that are that with increasing frequency, we are all being asked to do more with less. Those who can figure out how to do more with less will be competitive in the 21st century. Those who cannot will not. And you can either accept this or you can move to the 51st state of the Union, the state of denial. The second trend, technology. From CDs to DVDs to MP3s to PSPs to HD TVs, from iPads to iPhones to iTunes to iPods. Sometimes I wish that I had some iTime for iPeace and iQuiet to get some iSleep. Somebody said, I know that's right. Thank you. I heard that. But technology has revolutionized industry. When I graduated from Rutgers, I took a job working for AT&T. My first job. I was designing cell phones for AT&T. And at the time, this is the mid-90s, we ran these ads that were meant to be futuristic. We would say things like, have you ever sent a fax from the beach? Have you ever paid a toll without stopping? Have you ever read a book from 1,000 miles away? And then we would fade to black and say, well, you will, and the company that will bring it to you is AT&T. Well, think about it. We have all of that today. You can read a book on the internet from 1,000 miles away. You can send a fax from the beach from your phone. You can go down almost every toll road without stopping. In fact, the only thing that didn't come true is that AT&T didn't bring any of it to you. With all of that futuristic thinking, that was the one thing we missed, was that it wasn't us that brought it to you. But the implications of technology is that it has accelerated the change of pace in industry, what I call a hyper-accelerated rate of change. Those who can keep pace with this hyper-accelerated industry environment that we live in will be competitive in the 21st century. Those who cannot will not. And so the sum total of these trends that we've been witnessing, that these are not temporary shifts, but fundamental changes in how the industries function, which says to me, I've got news for you, Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. We are in the midst of a new era with new challenges. It gives rise to new opportunities, which also leads to the need for new mindsets, new ways of thinking. In fact, more specifically, to do more with less in a challenged economy and to counteract hyper-accelerated change fueled by technology, diverse suppliers and supplier diversity leaders must embrace the innovator's mindset. The way of thinking of an innovator. Now, what's innovation? Innovation, defined very simply, is the introduction of something new, a new process, a new way of doing things, a new technology, a new idea. That is, stated simply, innovation. What is the innovator's mindset? The innovator's mindset says you must have a healthy acceptance of failure as the only pathway to innovation. Failure and innovation must coexist. They go hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other. Innovation is predicated on failure, and in fact, here are three tenets of failure, three principles of failure. First, failure says nothing about you. It's not personal. We all fail. It says nothing negative about you to say that you failed. Second, you learn more from failure than you do from success. Think about how children learn, by making mistakes, learning from the mistakes, even though we try to prevent them from making the mistakes. Third principle, third tenet of failure, and I believe this is a quote, I think Winston Churchill, that success is nothing more than going from failure to failure with undiminished enthusiasm. Which says the following, that the connecting dot between failure and innovation is perseverance. That if you're willing to try it over and 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 over again, you'll innovate. But the question is, how many of us are willing to step into that space? Question, by a show of hands, how many of you have heard of WD-40? By a show of hands, WD-40. Who knows the story of WD-40? Can I get one hand? I got a hand here. I've got one hand. 2.5. WD-40, the lubricant, you know, the blue and yellow can. It's a very well recognized product. The story of WD-40, founded in San Diego in 1953, a staff of 3 people who set out to create a line of rust prevention solvents and degreasers for the aerospace industry. And the way that you prevent rust is by displacing water. The water leads to rust. Displace the water, less rust. It took them 40 attempts to get the signature formula right. WD-40 stands for water displacement perfected on the 40th try. Somebody clap for that, okay? I'm just getting warm. Who knows Formula 409? Show of hands. Formula 409. Work with me here, folks. Work with me. Who knows the story of Formula 409? I got 0 hands. 0. Formula 409, and this is true. I got it from Wikipedia. And I got it from their website, too. It is true. Formula 409 got its story from persistence. 2 young scientists in Detroit wanted to create the ultimate cleaner, the ultimate cleansing agent. Only when they created the 409th formula did they finally get it right. Formula 409 stands for the formula perfected on the 409th try. I'd have given up on the 10th try. Or maybe the 200th try, I'd have given up. Or maybe on the 408th try, I would have thrown in the towel. What's the overarching lesson? Do not let a setback hold you back, because a setback is a setup for a comeback. There's no pain, there's no gain. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. If there's no risk, there's no reward. If there's no test, there is no testimony. If there is no trouble, there is no triumph. If there are no problems, there is no power. No disappointment, no discipline, which means sometimes you have to go through in order to grow through, which means there's nothing ventured, there's nothing gained. If you don't believe, then don't bother, so go hard or go home, because failure is not falling down, failure is staying down. I'll wake y'all up. So how do you make the innovator's mindset practical? Especially for diverse suppliers and supplier diversity leaders gathered here for EMSDC's annual event. I would argue to my fellow MBEs, MWBEs, I would argue to my fellow supplier diversity advocates, supporters, managers, executives, and the like, 2 things have to change. First, we have to change the culture of supplier diversity, which is largely a culture and if you've been in this game long enough, you'll follow me here, of differential consequences for the same failures. Differential consequences for the same failures. Let me say it plainly. The culture of supplier diversity is such that if one diverse supplier fails, we are all perceived to fail. If one diverse supplier delivers late, we are all perceived to deliver late. If one diverse supplier delivers value, they're the exception. That's real talk. Let me play it even plainer. And Emmett and I were just having this conversation. I'll say it succinctly using the old adage, nobody gets fired for hiring IBM. We just talked about that. Nobody gets fired for hiring IBM. They do get fired for hiring BCT. So the culture of supplier diversity must change. And guess what? The culture of our organizations must also change. That is, particularly large organizations. I'm talking about Fortune 500s. I'm talking about large nonprofits like healthcare systems. I'm talking about universities and colleges, many other organizations that are sponsors of this organization. Culture must change within these organizations. What do I mean? The culture of large organizations is naturally a culture that is risk averse. There's a very good reason for that. You don't build a large enterprise by being willy-nilly with risk. Corporations, large organizations are predicated on managing risk. Anyone working at a corporation knows exactly what I'm talking about. But it is that risk-averse culture that can lead to less risky choices and makes it harder for new suppliers to disrupt the marketplace and certainly harder for new diverse suppliers to disrupt the marketplace.